We are back on Morning Line. Thanks for joining us. Our guest is Councilman Bob Mendez, one of the co-sponsors of an immigration ordinance that is going to have its third reading on July 6th. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks.
A lot of controversy out and about with that. We've got calls and questions coming in on Facebook. We're streaming on Facebook at newschannel5.com. Let's go to Mike. Mike, good morning.
Good morning.
Hi, Mike. Go ahead.
Hey, how are you this morning?
Good.
The way I see this law and laws like it, it's telling people to come to this country and not go through the steps of immigration, because if you don't do these steps and comply with them, that we're not going to do anything to you anyway. And if that's the steps that we're going to take, then why are we wasting this money on all the steps we're trying to do to keep people safe in this country?
All right. Yeah, that's kind of a big picture question. I mean, they're here, and a lot of people maybe beyond just your ordinance are just saying, look, this big question to the folks, and for them the word illegal means a lot. And they're like, you know, it's a simple matter of following the law, and if you don't, you have to pay the price.
Well, I agree that if you're going to break the laws, there should be consequences. I absolutely agree about that. The notion that, what the caller mentioned is that we would not do anything to them, I think respectfully doesn't take into account what the ordinance requires. Every single obligation in the ordinance is couched in terms of, first, we live up to our state and federal law obligations, and so whatever we need to do under state and federal law to enforce immigration laws, we do that first. Beyond that, we'd be making a policy decision that will leave that work to the professionals, and we'll focus on local issues.
Let's go to Taylor. Taylor, good morning. Hi, Taylor. Are you there?
Yes.
Good morning.
Sorry.
Hey, that's all right, Taylor. Go ahead.
I was concerned when the council even passed this ordinance on second reading. It appears to me that this is a ordinance to try to punish the Sheriff's Department through money that they would withhold from that department if the sheriff didn't do everything the way they want it to be done in the city. And there was a lengthy article on this in the Tennessean a week and a half or so ago, and it goes far beyond what is being mentioned in this program and some others that I can't remember all the details, but it was restricting the Sheriff's Department in a lot of different ways that I really think, for instance, these warrants being there in place, if a fugitive from Georgia winds up in Tennessee, there may be on the lookout for some person that particular state feels certain committed a crime, but has not been yet caught and indicted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the sheriff talked about that. I hear what you're saying, and that's where the concern would be.
There would not be a warrant in place for that person until he is captured and actually brought before the court, and that state or this state wanting someone from out of state. So there would be days and maybe even a week or two before that person would actually be charged with that crime. And the same goes for many of these federal things. And to not call it a sanctuary city and still be one, Nashville has been closer to being a sanctuary city than not being one for years now, and I think it's a lot of disingenuous excuses being used, and I don't know if Mr. Mendez is a immigration attorney or not, but he certainly speaks like one. So that's my point on it, and I hope this fails on third reading.
Thank you, Taylor. Any thoughts?
I'm not an immigration attorney. Just a couple of quick things. The idea that the jail holds people for 2 weeks without arrest warrants I don't think that's a thing that happens with citizens. You know, he described sort of emergency situations, and that's sort of apples and oranges to what happens in the sheriff's jail. And then on the sanctuary city, and we've essentially been one, is what the caller said. I mean, I can't. I understand the strong politics around the word sanctuary. The Department of Justice, led by Jeff Sessions, former Senator Jeff Sessions from the state of Alabama, has defined the term sanctuary jurisdiction, and this bill wouldn't create it. And for people who don't believe that, I don't know what else to tell them.
We have, like Teresa saying, you know, you taking into account that most people don't want this to pass, and I don't know that you necessarily agree with that. Do you think if this went to a referendum in Metro Nashville, it would pass?
I think it would pass in Metro Nashville. I think I don't think it would be 90 to 10. I think it would be closer than that. But I do think that the vast majority of Nashvillians, especially if it was a referendum where there was a long campaign to describe it, I think it would pass. Sure.
And you think much of the criticism you're hearing, at least through your office, is coming from outside the city?
Well, I'm confident that easily a third, maybe a half, not everybody uses an address, of the anti-emails are coming from outside the city. 3/4 of my phone calls have been from Knoxville for some reason. The phone calls opposed.
But your constituents, and you're an at-large councilman, have told you they support this.
I mean, it's definitely mixed, but I've gotten more support than opposition.
If something like this passes, I mean, do you have concerns that sometimes at the state level, then state lawmakers, and many of them outside have kind of voiced opinions on this, critical of it, could pass something that would try to supersede it? And I don't know the legalities, but could that be another step? The state say, well, you know, Nashville passed it, we're going to pass something now that supersedes that.
You know, as a technical legal matter, I think it would be hard to supersede it because it's drafted again to say we'll comply with all state law. So if they change what the state requirements are, our bill automatically is carved back to only be as far as the state will let us go. You know, there have been rumblings from some state legislators over the last week about seeking some other form of retribution against us rather than just superseding the bill. So far, that's no specifics have come with that.
Let's go to Joseph. Whoops. Hey, Joseph. Good morning.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm curious to hear more about how you mentioned local governments are being asked to assist in enforcing immigration law. For example, I read a story recently about immigrants being arrested in the Davidson County courthouses, and I was just kind of curious what ICE is doing locally that makes the councilmen feel like we need to pass an ordinance to respond.
Okay.
So regardless of whether we pass this bill or not, ICE, by their own description, likes to piggyback on city governments. You know, they wear vests that say police, for example, and they're very open about doing that on purpose because they find that they get more compliance if they wear police vests. Similarly, they've said that picking people up in the courthouse it works for them because they've described it as a controlled environment, and so they like using courthouses. You know, to the specific question about you know, using Metro resources, I understand with the incident a couple weeks ago that ICE made a phone call to judge's administrative person. The administrative person thought that it was MNPD that wanted the person detained, didn't understand that it was ICE. ICE showed up, picked the guy up.
Let's go to Aaron. Aaron, good morning. Are you there, Aaron?
Yes, hello.
Hi, go ahead, ma'am.
So I am a conservative, and I actually feel like I support this ordinance. So it seems like we shouldn't be spending local money to support the work of the federal government, and we should be spending our tax money on local priorities and not on the work that the federal government is doing. So is that what this ordinance is all about?
Okay. Is it about money? Because I don't see that this ordinance is going to be some huge cost savings. I know you talked about some beds. It's more policy, or am I wrong?
Well, and I mean, the thing I would add to the caller is, I mean, to the extent we've got existing state and federal obligations on immigration, we absolutely should. I mean, we have to do what we got to do on that front. Beyond that, you know, I don't think it's an enormous cost savings one way or the other. And anytime you talk about immigration enforcement, you have to talk about both the pluses and the minus. I mean, we didn't bring 12% of the population here. We didn't cause them to move here being foreign born. They clearly contribute to the economy. And if we went the opposite end and decided we were going to round up everybody who wasn't born in the United States and push them into another county, if we could even do that, it would be a dramatic negative hit on our economy to do that.
All right, let's take a break on that note. When we come back, our final segment, more guests, rather more callers for our guests, as well as a few more comments. Even though on Facebook Live, there's definitely two lines of thinking on this, and they're going back and forth on there, which is fine. So we'll be back with more right after this. Stay with us.